Hello, this is Forrest again. As promised, I was going to do a second video because it was going to run a little bit long, discussing evictions and eviction processes. I'm making this video mostly for anyone that wants to see it, but mostly for our clients. Some of our clients are very familiar with the processes of regular move-outs and then, of course, evictions, evicted move-outs, let's call it. Some of them are not. So the ones that are, fast forward, go to the next thing, go watch somebody play golf. But for the ones who are interested, I'm going to go through this and I'm going to get into some nitty-gritty details. I'm going to give you some examples. We're going to go through a lot of stuff. Okay, let's get into it. So if you want to evict somebody, let's say somebody's not paying rent or evict them for any reason. There's other reasons you can evict people, right? You can do it for not paying rent. You can do it because somebody's tearing up the place. You can do it for somebody because all the other tenants are raising Cain because this person's just terrible and does drugs. There's many reasons you can evict somebody, but let's stick to the not paying rent. That's the easiest one to talk about, the most common. So if somebody's not paying rent, and some of these tenants out there, they're wily coyotes. They know the deal. They know what's going on. They're savvy, right? They've lived somewhere where it was self-managed. The owner managed the property, and they didn't pay rent. They were late on rent constantly. All kinds of things were going on. And the owner of the property has been threatening eviction for months and stuff, and it's all heated. Finally, they move out. Well, that guy that's self-managed, in most cases now, not every case, but in most cases, it ends. That guy's cut his losses. He's not going to go spend money on an attorney to go after him or anything else. He's not going to try to recoup his losses. He's not going to do that. He's just happy as heck to get that property back because he's managing it himself. He's got more on his plate than he can speak of. He's got a regular job he's going to, and he's managing his property. Maybe a couple of properties he might have. His hands are full. He's not running after this guy. So that doesn't get reported. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, that person comes to us, and they see one of our properties. And, I'd love to live there. I'm going to put an application in. There it goes. We come through our system. It wadirs. The system can only check so much. It checks for criminal history. It checks for evictions. Checks for their credit record, all this kind of stuff. We look through and everything seems okay. And we say, okay, you can move in. No evictions. Now this person gets 4, 5, 6 months down range. They pull out their old violin. They begin to play the violin strings and say, I'm sorry, I can't pay my rent. That's what the violin says in key of E. Now, that being said, what are you going to do? The first thing we do, here's what we do, right, at LRM, which is Lynn Realty and Management. At LRM, we try to work with people because we know things can happen in people's lives, and a renter in a place is better than a renter that might be in a place. Obviously, that's better. Money coming in of any kind is usually better money. So you talk to them, you find out what's going on. If they eventually pay and it's over time, and they try to get back on track, you worked with them and it's fine, but let's say there's just no hope. They're 2 months behind now. Now it's time to pull the trigger. Or if let's say that they were behind in rent before, they eventually caught up, they got behind again, they eventually caught up. So there's a cycle going on here. And so this next month comes, and we give them to the 5th of the month to get the rent paid. From the 1st to the 5th, it's got to be paid. On the 6th day, they're late. There's an automatic late fee on top of there, but on the 6 days, they're late. If this is that person that's had a history, that's a couple times being late and stuff, they get a 3-day notice on the 6th. It says in 3 days, if you don't pay, you got to go, or we're going to pull you out of there kicking and screaming, whatever happens. And we have an attorney, oh my goodness, Darth Vader would be scared of these folks. I mean, they are unbelievable. They know eviction law inside and out. So what do? We go and we post a 3-day notice to the door. We hand it to them, knock on the door if they're there, hand it to them, and we post that 3-day notice. That 3-day notice gives them 3 days to get out or do whatever they're going to do, as I just talked about. But let's say, and again, for just scenario here, let's say they don't come through in 3 days with the money. They say, I ain't got the money. And then they're not moving out. They say, well, I ain't got no place to go. I don't have anywhere to do anything. I can't live in my car, whatever it is they're going through. So on the 4th day, they had 3 days. On the 4th day, nothing's happening. We contact our eviction attorney, Edwards and Edwards, and we take the eviction paperwork, which is all the records of the rent rolls from that particular tenant, and of course a copy of the lease from that tenant and any other pertinent information from that tenant. And we transmit that all over to Edwards and Edwards on the 4th day. Now, on the 5th or 6th day, depending on what day of the week it is and how busy they are, by the 5th or 6th day, they've digested that. Now, when they digest that, they've now ready to file an eviction. Now, again, tenant hasn't paid, tenant's probably not going to pay, so they'll contact us, hey, we're ready to go, or what's happening here? We thumbs up? Sure, your thumbs up, take off. So then they'll go to the courthouse and they'll file the actual eviction. When they file the actual eviction, it's in the court's hands. Now, this is where time seems to stand still. You're like in a time warp because there's no controlling it. They'll get to it when they get to it kind of thing, right? So once it gets to that courthouse, it goes into the evictions judges, the evictions part of the courthouse, and they set it up for a summons to be sent out. So then the summons is sent to the tenant. It says, hey, you're being evicted. The landlord here, which is the management company, says you got to go. You're not paying your rent. So here's what's going to happen. We want to hear your side. And they give them 10 days. Now, during that 10 days, the law has recently changed a little bit. It used to be that as soon as they got the summons, they had 10 days to take whatever the amount is. And let's just say the rent is $2,000. And they were 2 months behind. That's $4,000. So on the 3-day notice, backtracking a bit, on the 3-day notice, you're only allowed to ask for the exact amount for the rent. You can't ask for late fees or anything else. You can only ask for the amount of rent. So the summons that they're getting is for the amount of rent. And 2 months, that'd be $4,000 in the rent. Now the summons does explain some legalities there that have to do with attorney's fees downrange that could possibly be, or they're responsible for, so forth and so on. But what it used to say was, you got to come and give the court the $4,000, then the court's going to decide whether you get your $4,000 back or whether the landlord gets the $4,000. That was what it used to say. Now, what it says is, you got to come and bring us $4,000, or you could give us an excuse why you don't have the $4,000. And if they do that, and they have 10 days, on the 10th day they can do that. Let's say for worst case scenario, they wait until day 10 and they write out a letter on a napkin. They write out an excuse on a napkin and go turn that into the courthouse and say, well, this is why I didn't pay the $4,000 because whatever. And believe me, the tenants that you're evicting, they come up with all sorts of things. And we've seen lots and lots of different things. The average person being evicted, though, usually it doesn't come home to them until they get that summons, until they get the summons from the court. So what we've begun to do, and our attorney does this, what we've begun to do is once the 3-day notice goes out, basically on day 4, we're now preparing to file, but instead of filing right away on day 4, what we've begun to do now is the attorney actually sends a letter, usually certified letter, to that tenant and says, hey, it's coming, right? This is what's going to happen. And it lays out all the bad things about this happening, all about the credit impacts and the amount of money you're going to owe and all sorts of things that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. And it lays that out. In most cases, that jogs them. In most cases, they will usually move out. And again, it could be within a week or 2 days, that night. It can be a period of time, but they typically move out. So if we haven't heard from them about moving out, and we're going by and we're checking to see if they moved out, we're asking the neighbors or whatever to call us. But if we don't have any evidence they've moved out, then typically like on day 5 or 6, that we're ready to, again, they put the case together. So about, as I explained before, it's usually day 5 or 6 before it's ready to be filed anyway. So now 5, 6, 7 days rolls around, and now we're ready to file the eviction. So we go ahead and file the eviction. Now there's cost to the attorney, there's cost for the letter that goes out, there's some cost in that. But the reason we spend a couple of dollars sending that letter out in advance is because if we can halt it, even during that 10-day period, if we can halt that, the attorney's fee is going to be less. Even with the letter amount in there, the attorney's fees will be less than if they have to go full-on eviction process, which would be the 10-day expires, they got to go back, get a judge to sign it, and do all the things that we're fixing to talk about. So back to the story. Now the 10 days has come. They haven't given any money over to the court. And now at the end of the 10 days, then the attorney files for the eviction. Says, okay, we've waited long enough here. We need to get this property back. What can you do for us, Mr. or Mrs. Judge? And so then, of course, the judge is going to sign the eviction notice, and that can take another 2 or 3 days. So now the judge signs the eviction notice 2 or 3 days later, and let's just scenario it and say they still haven't moved out. So that'll bring on the police-assisted eviction. And in which case, then we have to pay the police. We have to get with the police and pay them. They'll set up an appointment. This is typically from the time we get a signed eviction order. It can be a couple, 3, 4 days. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is really good about it. They actually have an eviction squad for Jacksonville, and they're really good about it. Usually we're within 2 days of an eviction order getting it done. We have seen it, depending on times of year and stuff, we've seen it expand out a little bit. Or if there's a bunch of people being evicted, we've seen it expand out a little bit. Usually in a couple, 3 days, we can get the police out there. Everybody goes out, knock on the door, the people come to the door. Then the police tell them, you got to go right now. And they say, well, I can be out by tonight or by tomorrow. The police say, hey, you got to go now. And then we have to have guys that are typically from Works Rental Fix. They're clean out. They have some clean out specialists. We have them there. And if they don't move, everything in there's got to go. There could be, this is where it really gets down and dirty on an eviction. There can be kids in there and toys in there and just all sorts of junk inside there. We did one time. It took hours to get everything out of there, and it was a huge pile next to the road. I mean, it was a gigantic pile next to the road. And it was terrible because it was kids and kids' toys and kids' clothes. I can't believe parents, there was a mom in there, and I think it was the dad or boyfriend or whoever was in there, and they let it just go all the way down to this. And they had been told, not only by the letter, but by me. I had explained this process multiple times to them, this was going to happen, because I knew there was kids in there. And I talked to them on the phone, wrote them an email, actually posted a note on the door telling them about what was going to go on, went and knocked on the door and talked to them. Listen, you got to do something about this before these kids wind up. This is terrible. And the police department actually notifies them. So they have a 24-hour notice from the police department. Hey, we're going to be there. You might want to go ahead and leave. And then they're there, and then you got to go through all that stuff. And then you find out the place is trashed, and it deteriorates from there. So that's a worst case scenario. Now let's say that's where we're at. Let's say we've done all this stuff and we retrieved the apartment or home or whatever it is. Obviously, as I talked about in the other video, there's a security deposit. 100% you can claim the security deposit. Now here's where let's say now you're downrange, $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 or so on this eviction, and that's because they didn't require a court hearing. So let's say it's $1,200 or $1,300, $1,400 in your state. It could be more your city, but let's say that's where we're standing at. And let's say the security deposit was $1,500 for the security deposit, or maybe it was only $1,000 for the security deposit. Either way, we can claim the security deposit and take that and post it against cost. So many owners, and then of course there's a turn, and you can bet you if you're evicting them, I've seen cleanouts. We had one cleanout ran $1,300 just to get the place cleaned out. There was so much junk in there. The worst cleanout we ever had was one time it cost $8,000 to get everything out of the house, and then the yard was unbelievable. The backyard was it took 5 roll-off dumpsters to get everything out of the backyard. That's how much junk was in the backyard. Anyway, so you can make the claim, you can keep the security deposit. But you notice I said, even though you evicted them, you still have to make a claim, which means you have to send them a bill saying you owe this much in back rent, this is how much it's going to cost to fix the place up. You still have to send that to them. This is going to sound crazy. If you don't send them that within 10 days, guess what happens? They can get their security deposit back. Yep, they trashed the place, owe you a bunch of money, but you didn't tell them that. In 10 days, they're going to get it back. Now, the court in the land is going to make you keep it, no matter what happened. They're going to burn the place to the ground. They're going to get that security deposit back because you didn't tell them in 10 days that you weren't giving it back, and this is why. Got to make sure we do that, and that's what our job is. We make sure we do that. But if you're holding, as I said in the first video, if you're holding that security deposit and you slow roll this process and it runs beyond that 10 days, it's going to get really expensive really fast. So now back to the story. Now we've got them out of there. Now we've got the place. Now the place has to be turned. Now here's some options. And we've done this. So Now the person owes you a bunch of money. They owe you for the turn, which was horrendous. The turn was, we had a turn that ran $8,000 one time, but let's say the turn is a couple of $1,000 on a $1,000 security deposit. They now owe you $6,000 because it was $1,000 a month and they hadn't paid and it took some processing. So they owe you $6,000 total with a turn, and of course the couple 3 months it took to get all this stuff done. And then you got attorney's bills on there too. So now you've got an attorney that you paid somebody. So let's hit it for like $7,000 they owe you. I've had clients of ours that said, "Can we go after them?" Absolutely, you can go after them. It's all civil action, but you can go after them. And Edwards and Edwards, which is our attorney law firm, oh man, they will be happy to go out there and go after them. Now, what can happen? If you go after them, you can seek a judgment for the $7,000. That's a law. Let's say that encompasses all the attorney's fees and work and back rent, everything. Let's say $8,000 just for the heck of court costs and all. You're going to be over there and you're going to say, "Hey, these people owe me $8,000. I want my money." You file a civil action suit. Well, you're going to have to pay the attorney to begin with. Probably $1,800, $2,000 retainer to start. So because they're going to put in some legwork to get this done. And so they're going to file this. They're going to file this suit, but before they do that, they're going to want to try to find the people that were evicted. There's lots of processes it's going to go on. They're going to obviously want Social Security numbers. So make sure if you're listening to this and you're not dealing with us, we're going to have their Social Security number. Obviously, they wouldn't be there. Some of these management companies, like the one we took over some properties from, they literally had leases on napkins, no Social Security numbers, all kinds of craziness was going on. So you got their information. The attorney then can file a civil suit, basically saying, "Hey, these people owe us a bunch of money. They tore the place up, and this is what we're due back." They're going to file that lawsuit. Now, once that's done, they can then ask for a judgment. Again, you got a couple bucks there to get a judgment. Now, once you get a judgment, now what do you do with a judgment? A judgment is about as good with those folks that you've evicted. The judgment is about as good as a duck that can't swim. Let's just say that. If the tenant is a W-2'd employee somewhere, yes, that judgment can be turned into a garnishment order. It can be done. It's going to get a little bit expensive and take some time. And this is where I tell my clients, this is a slow process. Getting a judgment, that's a slow process. Getting the garnishment order, it's a slow process. I always urge my clients to think about this. That if they've already had the expense of the attorney and the evictions and stuff, they're going to pile on more, and there's a really good chance that these tenants are not ever going to pay that. The garnishment order is not going to mean anything. They're going to have a job. They're probably changing job to job. By the time that order catches them at that job based on the Social Security and reporting, when they report their taxes is how they find them. By the time that letter goes to that employer, the employer has to disclose to them when they get the letter, "Hey, we're going to fix to pop you for however much it is this week and every other week." They're going to go get another job, right? And they'll do that and 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 do that. Eventually that letter may catch them. Eventually they may get some money out of them. Eventually, you could be talking years down range to do this. So what I urge my clients to do is give that a lot of thought. Hey, what are we looking at here? Is this going to work out? Am I going to ever get paid on this thing before you go spending all that kind of money? And we try to help them. I mean, obviously, I can give them some advice looking at it. I've got lots of experience. Now, we've done this, by the way. We have, in a few cases, we've actually gone through, got judgments, got garnishments, and gotten paid. It does happen, but you got to remember, we manage a lot of properties, and we've been doing it for a while. So over those years we've been doing this, which is like a decade, and over the hundreds of properties that we manage, we've probably had this successfully done 5 times. Successfully, where we've actually got money coming back the other way. We've done it. We've actually, because the property owner wants to do it, we've pursued it about 8 or 9 times. So it's probably about a 55% chance that you're going to get it, that you'll get the judgment based on those numbers. But that means there's about a 45% chance you're just throwing good money after bad. I usually suggest depending on the circumstances and all this, lots of things that we talked about, I usually suggest licking your wounds and getting that property up and running, make some money with it, and go on from there. I tell investors all the time, when they get in this, the thicker their skin, the better off they are. Now, some investors out there, some people that own these homes, you know, they don't have any money. I mean, they're barely getting by as it is, and then they have this rental property, and this stuff goes wrong, or repairs happen, and all this kind of stuff. It's just this white nightmare scenario, which is in another coming video. But now that you know the eviction process, I'm going to tell you some things that can happen. I'm going to go back and I'm going to change a couple things along the way and let you give you an idea of what happens in there. Remember we talked about that 10-day period. Remember we talked about that they didn't post anything. It all went, from that point, it went pretty much predictable. But let's just say that, as I mentioned, let's just say that they write a little letter. None of them's going to turn the money in. All right? None of them's turning. Zero chance they're going to turn the money in and you're going to go fight it in court. It's not going to happen. But we have had them write a letter, send it in, and now you got to have a court date. Now that's going to extend the process. By the way, the process that we've been talking about is typically, we've actually been able to pull 14-day ones out. Rarely. It's typically 18 to 30 days, right? This process takes 18 to 30 days. And we had one, though, that she wrote a thing and went to court, and terrible for her to do that because the judge completely sided with us and said, you got to pay and you got to get out. Obviously, you got to pay or you got to get out, one or the other. So it went the wrong way. And usually when they go to court, that's what happens, because the first thing judges says is, hey, why didn't you pay? And then they say, well, and again, well, I had to fix this and I had to fix that, so I had to spend rent money to fix the place up. And then the judge always says, do you have the receipts where you had somebody do it? Well, I did it myself. Well, do you have the receipts where you bought the materials? Well, no, I don't have those receipts. The judge usually will say, because it's a judge now, with lack of evidence that shows that you actually do it, I have to side for the plaintiff in this case. I got to go and hand the eviction over. You don't have anything, and that's usually how it goes. But when it does that, it actually expands on the attorney's fees. That can end up costing some money. Another thing that, another little caveat on this whole eviction thing is that, if you do get into that thing where they're going to take you to court and everything, our attorneys and most out there do make sure that they're going to be on. You make sure they're going to be there. Ours, we know that's going to happen, but if you have one, you may want to make sure that you're on top of this thing, because if something happens and you're not there, you don't show up, or the attorney doesn't show up, and this is why I always tell people, don't do an eviction. If you're a property owner, don't file the evictions and do them yourself. I mean, I know there's plenty of people out there that are Clarence Darrell on the side, but that shows my age. But most times, if you don't have an attorney and you go in there, you can wind up just really getting in trouble. You can wind up spending a bunch of money, costing yourself a lot of things. So always get an attorney to do that. So the question then is, when you get into these situations, is when the 3-day notice should be sent out, what you should do. Now, this is what I alluded to before, and I said I was going to talk about it here at the end, and I am. And that has to do with tenant savvy. How smart are these tenants? How many times have they gone down this road? What do they know about the eviction laws? Because a lot of them, you'll find, a lot of them out there, they do know all this stuff, right? So, and this is something that's recently come up with a client, and I advise on this. In Florida, many other states probably, if, let's say, as we said, they have the 1st through the 5th to pay, on the 6th they're late, and then you get the 3-day notices and so forth and so on. They have the 10-day window and all these kind of things. If they're late paying, or if they're not late paying, and they pay you partial rent, let's say the rent is $1,000, and they pay you $300, $100, $50, well, let's say $300 for argument's sake. They pay you $300, and they say, I'll have the rest of it on the 15th. You wait till the 15th, nothing happens. Nothing happens on the 16th, 17th, and you go back to them and say, listen, I gave you a 3-day notice, I accepted this amount. Or maybe before the 3-day notice, like I said, that window, you accepted the partial amount. Well, guess what? Now, you can't do anything. Even if you had filed a 3-day notice, you can't do anything until the next month. So you say, okay, well, the next month comes. They didn't make good on that month, but they're promising. They're promising. They gave me another, this time they gave me $400. Says, I'll make it up. I promise you. I know you back rent from last month, and I owe you more rent from this month. By the 15th, I get my check. Ha, 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 ha. And they're going to do it. And so you hang in there again. And they still don't do it. They don't make the 15th. They got every excuse in the world. They got the violin playing unbelievably. You know, I don't have the money. I'm sorry. You know the tune. And so as they move down range with this, they know what they're doing. Because the minute you accept any money for rent for that in that month, not for that month, this is back rent is what you're thinking of. But the minute you accept any money in that month, you got to wait till the next month to do it. Somebody asked me one time, so why do you have to wait till the next month? Is it a legal issue? It is. But here's the thing. If it's the 15th of the month and 16th and 17th of the month, and they haven't paid you, the eviction process is going to take you, like I said, it could take you more than a month. If they write a note to the judge or whatever, it can expand it out. You could be talking 45, 60 days maybe if they know what they're doing. But even if it was just a month, even if you could file right away on the 18th when they file it, you just made your man, I'm going to file it, and you start the process of the 3-day notice you gave them that month. Even if you could file it then, which you can't because you accepted money, but even if you could file it then, you're talking 30-day process. The problem is now that next month, now they owe you money for that month, and you can't include that because you've already told the judge how much you're looking for this month. Now the judge can come along. If you have an attorney, then the attorney will include that. He'll go back and say, listen, now this is taking so long. They've been in another month. They owe some more money. The judge can take that in consideration. Again, the judge got a note, and there's all sorts of things. But you now extended what could have been done in like 30 days. You're now extending it on your fault. You're extending it possibly to 45 and 60 days or so. When you're better off just waiting. If you're at the 18th of the month anyway, you're better off waiting, post another 3-day notice on the 5th of the next month, post another 3-day notice asking for that rent too, and then taking from there, because the 3-day notice you wrote is still good, it's still valid. You can still work from that. If you wait 2 months or 3 months, you can still work on that 3-day notice you gave them. Because you're going to say, hey, look, I've been trying to work with them, my 3-day notice. You can still file an eviction based on a 3-day notice that's a couple months old or so. So you don't have to worry about that. But it's being able to include the other rent. So you wait till the next month. That's what I tell people. Wait till the 5th of the next month. Now do another 3-day notice that includes that month on there. And now go ahead and file the eviction on the 6th day. There's no waiting period. If they come crying and playing that violin again, just go ahead and file it because you're not going to get your money. But that's why I say you've got to be careful with the tenant you're dealing with, because tenants will know, and they'll know that they give you some money that your hands are not tied. So what are they going to do now? You're like this in the corner saying, I can't get out of these handcuffs. I can't get my money now because my hands are tied. And they know this. Don't let them fool you. They know what they're doing. So, the reality is that you should wait until the next month and then file for the whole amount, and then don't take no for an answer. Either you got it all or nothing. Don't take any money. And I know, especially for self-managed properties, it's very tempting. Again, you've got the one house, you're working hard, you're paying bills, you're paying property taxes, insurance, and maybe even a mortgage. It's very tempting when somebody owes you, say, $3,000 in back rent. They'll say, I can give you $1,000 tomorrow, and take in the $1,000. The thing is that now they're doing is they're buying themselves at least another 30 days, maybe more. Who knows? They could be buying for $1,000. And now you're 6 months down the line. You've only collected for 2 months of the 6 months because you took snidbits the whole time. Now you're filing an eviction. I've seen this happen, and I know it sounds crazy, but I actually took over a property. Well, my company, we took over a property that the prior management company was 8 months, almost 9 months downrange before they ever tried to file for the eviction, and we ended up getting the property. We ended up handling the eviction like that we worked the eviction, and that tenant was crying, boo-hoo, they're going to pay this. And that's what they've been doing to the prior company. And the prior company, they told me, they said, well, some money's better than no money. I said, no, it's not. Some money's not better than the rent you're going to collect if you get them out of there and you collect full rent from that point on. That's just ridiculous to say. But that's what they said. Some are different than others. Anyway, now I think you know the eviction process and the ins and outs. If you want more information on that, you can contact us. We're obviously not attorneys here. We're just property managers. And we're a real estate firm, brokerage, and we know what we know from the experience. We're not attorneys, but we can put you in touch with a great attorney. That's Edwards and Edwards. They're fantastic at what they do. But if you need some advice on this and some leverage or whatever you're looking to do, just leave a comment below or contact us through Lynn Realty and Management. You can send the email Lynn Realty and Management through gmail.com. I'll put it down there. Anyhow, great talking to you. Hope you have a better day. Hope you don't find yourself with an eviction. It's terrible. Thanks for watching.